I am a temple who walks the earth. My womb is fertile for giving birth. I am a woman planted in truth. I grow my branches from sacred roots. You are the form of who you want to be. So come untethered, your soul is free. We're here to heal, we're here to thrive. We are a dream who's come alive. We light a candle, our hearts awake. Illumination for God's sake. A revelation for God's sake. An evolution for God's sake. An inspiration for God's sake. 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 For God's sake.
And so it is. Hello, Essence. This is Jody England, and you are listening to Wild Soul Medicine Radio. It's funny, just as I was sitting here, as the theme music was playing, I was having this intense intervention from the universe. And it was literally like I got amnesia about what I was talking about. And so I feel like I'm sitting at the news desk with the, like, this just in. And I have no idea what the this just in actually will be, other than I think we're going to still talk about love. But we will see as we drop into this space. That was really disorienting. So interesting. And we're in, I think we're in Mercury retrograde still. So there's this interesting like slowness in the computers and the technology and all of those pieces. So it feels like an invitation for us to really drop in, to drop beneath our mind, to drop beneath our busyness or whatever we've been engaged in up into this moment, and see what's here for us today. I am just as curious as you are. So let's do that together. I invite you to close your eyes and just begin calling in your awareness from wherever your energies are entangled, other than here. Whatever you were doing earlier today, whatever you're headed to next. Imagine that you can leave those things right outside your space, and you can invite just your energy to join you right in the center of your awareness. Go ahead and feel what that feels like to begin collecting yourself up. And as you do so, begin to notice what's happening in your space. So what energies are present? What is your emotional state? What does your physical body tell you? Yeah, one of the beautiful things about doing a show like this is that really any energy work. So in magic school and soul medicine path work, whenever I am preparing a topic, I always get a big dose of the medicine of that topic as I'm delivering it, as you've probably experienced if you offer courses or trainings or coaching of any kind. You may often find yourself coaching on the very thing that you are intensely learning in that moment. So that's what feels like is happening to me in this moment. I thought I was all set to talk about this, and I'm like just checking in with my body, like, what is happening here? Or is there something that I haven't been paying attention to? Or Why am I not fully present or down and in here? So because I can feel some agitation in my system. I was coughing a bunch right before the show started and feeling really irritated about that. And so as I tune into it, it feels kind of like a puff of smoke that would have me not be fully in my heart space. So there's a way that I might have offered the medicine of this show from a headspace. So talking from a headspace rather than from my heart space. So that feels like I'm getting the memo. Nothing a little presence can't cure. Oh, I love it. Okay, great. So let's see if you can drop right down into your heart space right now. Let's all do that. If you can move out of your headspace. I know we have some really avid listeners, which I love you all so dearly. And sometimes we come to the call with we're taking notes and we're making sure we get all of the information so we can go do the thing. And this Untamed Valentine is about us showing up, actually being, right? Actually having the experience of being the thing that we long for, of being love, of being heart, of being feminine and present and full. So go ahead and allow yourself that. And if you can't do that fully right now, if you're listening to this while you're working or something, perhaps come back and listen again when you can actually offer yourself the gift of the experience. And as you drop below the headspace, just notice what that's like. We're going to actually do some energy work a little bit further on in the broadcast. So if you're having a hard time getting there or staying there right now, don't fight yourself too much. Just notice if there are any easy adjustments that you might be able to make to allow yourself to really just drop into the tenderness or the fullness or whatever is there in your heart space as we begin. And as you do that, you may experience some emotion, or you may experience some warmth or some fullness or any number of things. So just notice what there is for you as you allow yourself to come here to this circle of remembering from the place of your very own heart. And then you're welcome to stay in that place with your eyes closed as you listen, or if you'd like to open them, we'll just move forward into what wants to be shared here. So I was inspired to this topic today for a few reasons. One, because, we're nearing Valentine's Day, which, I think as with most everything in our regular lives has so much superficiality surrounding it. So we go through some motions and we might send a card or get a card or eat some chocolate or do some things. Or, I actually have a picture of myself in college with one of my friends we were holding up a heart. It was Valentine's Day and we didn't have boyfriends. And we were holding this heart with a sad face, because all of our friends were out doing Valentine's Day stuff. And that's kind of how I've always related to this holiday. For me, it's been kind of a wah, wah, wah. And even as I've become more loving and more soft, I've just never been turned on by the superficiality of it. So when I was feeling into what wanted to be shared today, it was like, oh, well, there is the obvious current of, love that we could talk about. And then my inquiry was, is there something deeper here? What's the stickiness around this, and where is our growth edge here, so that we can, really get into something that means something and not just going through some motions. So there's a few pieces that have been floating around that were coming together for me. And the first one was something that was shared by a friend of mine who was talking about that she's been working the edge with her husband of wanting to be more loving to him. She's noticed that she's cold, and he has brought it to her attention that he doesn't really feel her love, and could she be a little nicer and a little more loving? And so, she wants to be a good wife, so she said she would do that, and she's been saying her affirmations that she is a good and loving wife and that she, cares for him and loves him deeply and all of that. And when she shared that, one, I could resonate because that's definitely a piece that I have felt at times in my marriage, for most of my marriage, like it really felt like the ice queen and not sure why that's happening or how I can stop having that be the case. And also noticing, that really, I think so many of us don't actually know how to go about this business of loving and being loved. And so I would play today with both sides of that coin because I feel like there are, so it's a little bit of an extension of the lone wolf medicine we spoke about a couple of weeks ago, but we're going to really just focus it in the heart space this week because, some of us are really good at loving others or we think that we're really good at loving others. And so what that might look like is we do things for other people or we have a really open heart and we accept them for who they are and we don't judge them and we're really kind and gentle. And that's a certain kind of love. And there's also a way we could bypass, right? We could bypass actual love by being in that space of like, I'm going to love you through any of your stuck places and I'm going to, I'm going to fix you so you don't be uncomfortable because that would make me uncomfortable. And so there can be some insidious little ties to what we might think is love might actually be something we're doing for ourselves. And as I say that, I want to just cop to for all of us that there's nothing we don't do for ourselves. Whether you know it or not, every single way you are is either essence or some protection from your ego, right? And so ultimately, it's still all about yourself. There really is no completely selfless thing to do. Why is that the case? Because you're an individuated human being. And so even if you have found the purity of love, there's this selfish reason of doing that. It feels really good. It feels really good. It's in alignment with who you are. And it's funny that we have this idea in our society that anything that's selfish or for the self is a bad thing. Isn't that funny? It's the antithesis of essence. I mean, we've been conditioned that anytime we get in ourselves or do something for ourselves, that we're somehow wrong or bad or limited or less than or unconscious or something. And really, it's completely the opposite. We are laying the groundwork here for something brand new. It is a completely new harmonic on the planet where essence is queen. And so from this space, there's a whole lot more depth available to play with any topic, right? Because we begin to have a seat in the throne of ourself, and then we can look at what's happening outside of us. What is this love thing that's passing back and forth? What is it that's moving through me or from me or to me, So we've got the lovers, right? And we've got the societally, I would say they're more accepted because they do things the way we're used to seeing them done. And then there's the shadow of ways that they might use love to not actually feel the other end of the spectrum from themselves or others. And then on the other camp, we have those of us who have a really hard time receiving love. So we tend to be kind of guarded or hard to reach or hard to get to. Often we don't know why we can't receive more love, but we just don't have any feeling in our heart space, or we just can't connect with how we might open a door there. It feels really vulnerable and risky to let something like that in. And I know when I first had, it was actually one of my very first energy work experiences, probably 13 years ago, 12 or 13 years ago. And I was having some body work done by this woman who actually was really brilliant. And as she began to work on my heart space, she said, "Wow, your heart is wrapped in barbed wire." And I was a little shocked because I'd never really had feedback like that from someone who was in my energy space. And it also felt really true. So I was like alarmed by it because it certainly didn't sound very nice. And also I was up for clearing it. I was like, well, great. If we can move it, can we do that? And so I had a really beautiful heart opening from her, and it was magnificent. And then, of course, there are layers and layers and layers and contraction and respiration and, forward and back and all of that. So over the next, decade or so, I've done much, much more intensive work in my heart space and in understanding how these mechanisms work, what causes us to close our hearts in the first place, and what allows them to open. More importantly, how do we actually open those doors back up? And more recently, I've had some great breakthroughs around actually allowing myself to feel love in completely new ways, to feel how much my husband has always been loving me that I haven't been allowing in, and then when that happens, I can actually feel how much I love him. And the other day I was saying to him, like, wow, how have you been walking around all this time loving me so much? It's almost like debilitating. It's so juicy and yummy. Like, it's distracting. And we were just giggling about all of that. And so as we open this conversation, I invite you to be willing to become curious about how your own energy system is oriented around giving love and receiving love, right? So let's look at them separately so you can really feel what that's like inside of you. And then we'll play with what we might do to actually shift it if shift is required. And before we do that, I want to just say some of you I can feel you energetically asking, and so what about the woman who was doing the affirmations? How did it turn out? Well, what I said to her is, I don't actually feel like it's about you. I don't feel like the affirmations are the connection, right? It feels like those affirmations actually solidify some unconscious commitment you have to not being loving, because as you say those affirmations, it's like you're firming up in your system. It's like you're shaming yourself, right? Like I'm not loving. And so you're sort of like reinforcing the not loving. So there's something under the surface. Of course, consciously, we all want to be loving and we want to get love. But remember, our consciousness is only 4% of our access point. So 96% of what is running our system and creating the love that we are or aren't getting and receiving is our subconscious. So that's where that's the shadowy Valentine that we are to ourselves is, what really is in the way of me having the love I want. And for some of us, that's, we're trying to attract our partner or our soulmate. And, many people in our tribe are in that space of like, I really want to find my twin flame. And yet, why isn't that happening? Well, it's because of the shadowy Valentine that's in the way. That says, that's not safe, or what if I get disappointed, or what if he's mean, or what if he leaves me, or, what if I can't be met or meet him? Like there's a million stories that could be running there. And for those of us that are already in partnerships, there's the shadowy Valentine of like, oh, the honeymoon has worn off. And so now how do I be loved? Or how do I love him when he's not doing what I want? Or if he's not on my same path, or, whatever those stories might look like. So wherever you are in this, what is it? It's like, it feels like a struggle wherever you are in this like saga of love, because like every song is written about the sadness of not having this thing. And every movie is about, the tension between, not being partnered and then partnered, or, being unhappily partnered. And then where's the happily ever after and all of that. And what I have found is that ultimately it comes down to this internal systemic setup of what are you actually available for? Because everything that's in your space is a reflection of what you're actually available for. So if you are in a loveless marriage, that's because there's something in you that is set up for a loveless marriage. It's not because your partner isn't doing what you want. You think it's that's the 4%, right? You think that's why it is, but it's actually the 96% of your system had some experiences and said, okay, not that anymore. And so I'm going to try to get this way instead. And then we put up barriers and we lick our wounds and stitch them up. And then we start vibrating a different way, So that's really what our call is for today, is to look at love as an energy, love as an expression of the fullness or lack of fullness of our energetic exchange with life. So I like to think of love as like the currency of the universe, and your money situation really is a tiny grain of sand on that expansive beach of exchange with life, right? And really you could imagine that love is a piece of every grain of sand. Love is the way, it's underneath everything. So it's under, compassion and being with, it's under our shadows, it's under the light. It's, it really is the animating force of the universe. And so how we interact with love is really not only a foundational precept for everything else you're wanting to create in your life, but it's also an end in and of itself, which I find very few things are, So the pursuit of love handles everything. If you can love purely and be loved purely, I think you really are, you're pretty much handled, And so you could just make a lifelong pursuit, if you wanted to, of looking at all the ways you are not love. Where else is that true? And then as you move that, you actually have the freedom to be the fullness of all that you are. And I want to just also note that as I talk about loving and being loved, we're so conditioned to think that's an external thing, right? So can I love another person? And can I let another person love me? And of course, as we circle back around to this brand new harmonic of essence, all of that has its genesis in, can we love ourselves, right? So when we are in essence, we are love. We are the expression of love embodied. And so, really we can also boil everything down to, like, if I'm in essence and I'm in love with myself, then that also extends to, falling in love with the essence of another, or, even if they're in their smaller self, even if they're not all the way clear, even if they're not on your same path, there's this way that being in essence actually allows love to become a no-brainer, literally, right? The no-brainer. We dropped out of the mind and into the heart. No brains allowed. So let's play. I want to play with you here in this space. I'd like to invite you in to see how your system is set up for love or not, and then we'll play with what we might do to move it. So I'm just going to invite you to close your eyes. I'm going to try a little something different on my sound system too. So Viv, let me know if this doesn't sound good. What happens is I've heard that when we do the energy work, sometimes there's some loud feedback on the line. So I'm going to see if this makes that better. If it's not good, let me know, Viv, and then I will put something else on. So what I'd like you to do is to go ahead and close. Okay, Viv says not good. Sorry about that. Okay. All right. Well, we'll just let the buzz happen in between if it needs to. Okay. So what I'd like you to do is go ahead and close your eyes again. Allow yourself to, if you feel like you're still in the headspace, let's be a little more intentional here. So imagine that you can step into an elevator in the center of your head, and that you can push the button and just slowly, slowly ride the elevator down through your face, through your throat, all the way down into the center of your heart space. And imagine that as you arrive there, you can allow the elevator doors to open, and you can reach outside the elevator and turn a light switch on. And just take a look outside. You don't have to step out yet. You can just take a look and see, what do you notice in this space? For some of you, it may look dark and kind of empty. For some people, it may be red or have some light to it, or any number of other things. The sky is the limit. So when you feel ready, imagine that you can take a step out of the elevator. And it's funny, I just got an image of Red Cross women, right? Like we're bringing some first aid to our heart systems, to this place where we so often hold our wounding. And it's, for women, it really is the center or the nexus of where we are meant to be exchanging with life. And so when this part of our system is out of whack, which it is in general, because there's so much masculine energy running the planet and it hasn't been safe for us to operate from heart space, and, add that to all of the individual egoic wounding that we have, there's always some work to be done here in the heart space. So you're in good company. And just imagine each of your sisters who is listening to this now or on the recording showing up here to triage their system, to take a look at what's not in alignment here and what is no longer required, so that we might open our space for more us. And so imagine that you can make your way over toward the organ of your heart, right? So for those of you who know energy, you could work with this in the center, like in the heart chakra, but I find that the organ of the heart actually holds more energetic information for us. So as you make your way over to your heart, imagine that you can start to look and see, first of all, what is the state of your heart? So we're not even looking at it, how does it give or receive, but just like, what is the state of it? And you may notice bandages, you may notice scars, it may be dark, it may look like it's had a heart attack, it could look like whatever. So if you need more light, add that. And then just kind of walk all the way around. So if what you're seeing looks really good, make sure you're walking all the way around so you can also see the back of the heart and see what's happening in that space. And just notice, be curious, like someone honoring a sacred monument. That whatever's here, if there's a lot of damage, if there's not, that whatever you're seeing, it can just be like, oh, yes. I wear those wounds proudly, or I've survived that thing, or whatever you're noticing, just let yourself be present with it. Beautiful. Yes, and then before we change anything, I want you to notice, based on the way your system is currently oriented, notice how your system would give love if it was going to. Right? So this may be puzzling, right? It may be puzzling. It's like, as I look at our collective heart, it looks like there might not even be a window, or like it looks so bandaged up and so protected that I'm not sure where or how it would. Like there's not a lot of energy coming from it. I don't see a window of how it could broadcast love or where the particles could come out of. So just notice. Or if you're one of those shiny heart people, perhaps you have, perhaps it's like a spotlight, like a lighthouse, and you can see a giant beam of light shooting out. And so just notice how that looks. Whatever your system is, notice, how is it exchanging? How does it give love to others? And then if it's one of those shiny ones, or if you're telling yourself something like, oh, I've totally got the love part handled, I do that really well, see if you'd be willing to take another deeper look and just see, is there any way that this way of broadcasting love isn't in alignment? Is there any shadow of it? Right? So an example might be you're broadcasting so much love out, there actually isn't any love shining inward, right? So it's like you're leaking love, or it's one directional. So I don't know what you're going to see, but just see if you can take a look. What can you notice about the way that you give love out into the world? Yes. And so you can just allow that knowledge to seep into your brain, right? You're having some new awarenesses for yourself. And next, let's take a look at how your system is set up to receive love. How would this heart space receive love if the person who loves you most in this world was in front of you, unconditionally giving you a bath of love? How would you be able to receive that? Where would it come in? What would it look like? Is there any kind of receptacle for such a thing? Just notice. Beautiful. So now that you have an idea of how your system exchanges with love, see if you can let go of any judgments, right? So there's no reason to feel shame about it not being something else, or no need to move into struggle like, oh, there's so much work to fix this. None of that. That's not very loving. We're just noticing. So let's begin to play now. And let me just see. So it looks like first we need to do a bit of clearing out. So if you are noticing some wounding on your heart or around it, go ahead and tend to that. What I like to do is actually tend to it with gold. So gold is one of the most powerful energies in the universe, and you can use it, you can make it whatever you want. So if you need some golden salve or some golden stitches, if you need a golden compress, but whatever you're doing, allow the gold to heal it instantaneously. So even the oldest wounds can be healed in a moment. And if you have a sense that they're wanting to heal slower, it's likely because there's still some story underneath that. So then I just like to imagine like a stronger grade of gold that actually makes it like brand new. So go ahead with your Red Cross hat on and start tending to these tender places in your heart. And you may know what they're about. You may know what some of them are about, or many of them, or none of them. And it's not actually important that you rehash what they were from. Like, oh, that mean boyfriend I had, and then my mom. And, you don't actually have to do all of that. Just see if you could heal it in this energetic space of just tending to what's here energetically. That actually is a highly efficient way to avoid having to do all the story work and just move what's possible to be moved right here, right now. So I'm going to give you a few moments to play with that. Beautiful. So just keep working with that. Let's take another 30 seconds or so. And the cool thing about energy space is you can really let it be easy. So if you need a team of healers, you can invite them in to help you. You could throw a blanket of gold or a golden shower over your whole heart and allow it to just come up to wholeness and health. Beautiful. And if you're listening to this on recording, of course, you could pause here if you need more time to play. And next, let's play with creating the energetic exchange between this beautifully golden, healthy heart and the world, right? So what I'd first like to have you do is we're going to fill up with it internally first, right? We, as women, we're so used to skipping this step and going right into like, great, so how can I give the love or love my children more or love my husband more? But it's like filling up with the love first is what allows it to be sustainable and solid, right? So I'd like you to imagine that you can... Oh yeah, so this is the image. I kept seeing a cross the whole time. So it feels like it's a cross that we're really creating. So first we're doing the vertical bar of the cross, which is the up and down. So if you can imagine that if there are any barriers between the ceiling and the floor of this heart chamber, that you could allow them to gently dissolve or fall away, or maybe you create a hole in the floor and the ceiling, so that the shininess of this golden heart can actually travel up through your midline and down through your midline. So you can just feel, if you were to fill up with this love. If love is a concept that's still hard for you to grasp, just say, I'm filling up with this energy, this golden energy from my heart space. That's what I'm filling up with. Because in a way, it's interchangeable with essence. It's like you're filling up with essence, and the qualities of it are so similar to love, right? Love has a slightly more generic quality. Essence has a little bit more of a unique fingerprint, but at their core, they're the same thing, right? You are the currency of the universe. So just feel that in your space. Imagine it warming through your body. So now it's spreading. It's not only just along your midline, but you can feel it spreading out to the edges of your body, the edges of your shoulders, up above, all through your face. Make sure it's spreading down through your back as well, so that you are nourishing yourself fully with all that is. And, you know, if this feels like a foreign concept, it should, because it's not at all how we talk about love. It's not how we're taught about it. You know, we all have this notion of finding someone who completes us, and that love being this head thing or this external thing or something that you could, you know, get from a cheesy dollar store card or whatever, right? And fundamentally at its core, love is a remembering. Love is a remembering of who you are. It's seeing yourself in another at this core level of recognition, essence to essence. And if you aren't in essence, you can't fully be seen by another, even if they are in essence. You know, they can see your essence. They can kind of skip over that part. But as you open into the fullness of yourself, people can't help but see it. Right? That's what you bring. It is how you respirate yourself with the world. So I invite you to just imagine that you could surrender to it now fully. It's not something you have to hold or direct, but if you could just let your hands off the wheel so that you could fill yourself with yourself in this moment, becoming your own personal Valentine. Beautiful. And so as you reach fullness in yourself, let's now imagine a ray of sunshine opening right in the center of your chest, right? So that you have so much infinite wellspring of love in your system that you can open a window in the front and the back of you, and you can allow a ray. So you're making a cross, but you're like the center of the cross, and it's the crossbar, the horizontal bar is coming right through the center of your chest and out the back of you. And just feel how it's a yellow brick road of sorts, right? Except for it's even more light and airy. And there's a lot more capacity for all of the kinds of love that you would be open to exchanging. So it might be the love of a pet, or touching, even touching your pet, or a soft look, or a caress, or support, or kindness. It could be sensual and sexual. It could be juicy. It could be soft, right? There's an infinite number of expressions of love that are possible from this energetic space of openness. And you can also feel how there isn't actually a directional, right? So it's not like giving and receiving are two separate things. There's this space of both and. Like, I am love, and so anything I would do for you, I do for me, right? Because everything's about me and everything's about you. And so from this space, there is no like equation of I'm getting or I'm receiving. It's love. That's it. And so just feel the joy of that entering your system. Feel how you can let go of any kind of monitoring or scorekeeping or checking or holding or surrendering even. There's not even a surrender required. It's just it's pure beingness. You were made for this, literally. You were made from this. Beautiful loves. Thank you for all of that. So good. Great. So you can just hang out in that space if you'd like. You can keep your eyes closed and just continue being the love that you are. Or you can open your eyes and see what it's like to be that much love. Actually, as you are entertaining consciousness as well. So good. Yeah, so I'm just feeling into, on the one hand, this is a beautiful place to end. And on the other hand, I'm feeling there's a little practical application that might be fun to entertain. So I'm going to do that. So we've just played with love as energy. And you can feel what a shift can happen in your system on a deep, deep level from actually moving the energy of it rather than thinking about it, right? So I would always recommend the energetic level first. And then there might be some, because we are really reorienting our entire system, your mind will begin to be re-informed about what to do or how to act. But those would be an extension of the beingness, right? So that's why I wanted to do the energy work first. So now that we have this beautiful space of clarity and openness, one of the things that I really love to play with around loving as an activity is I really do enjoy the book, The 5 Love Languages. I think it's by Gary Chapman. Viv will put that on the chat for us so we have that. And just so you know, I don't get any affiliate thing from him. I don't know him. I just like this book. And what's great about it, it's a really thin book. And on his website, you can actually take this short little quiz and you can discover your own love language. So there are 5 different ones. Of course, I'm drawn to it because there's 5 and there's 5 soul medicine paths. There's a lot of synchronicities as well between the paths and the love languages. And I'll talk just a little bit about that. So the 5 love languages are things like words of affirmation, acts of service, gifts. I'm trying to think of the other 2. I knew I would forget them. Oh, I'll think of them as we go on. So anyway, you can discover like what's your primary love language and then what's your secondary and how you score in all of the other categories. And you can have your spouse take it. You can have your children take it. They actually have a special one for kids. And so we've done that in my family. Touch is another one of the languages. So we've got touch, acts of service, words of affirmation. Okay. Anyways, I'll get back to them. Viv, can you post the 5 love languages on the page? That would really be awesome. So anyway, what's great about this is we've had our children take it as well. And so it does a couple things. What it did for me was it helped me to understand myself better, because the premise behind it is we all have a way that we, it's just like speaking English, right? So if I speak English and you're speaking Spanish, then I'm like, why don't you love me? Because I can't understand a thing you're saying, So it's like the same thing with these love languages. If I want to be loved by you doing acts of service for me, but you think you're loving me by telling me how nice I am, then it's like we're speaking different languages, because what you're saying doesn't really land for me. And I don't really have a place to put that, which is what happens so much in relationships when people think they fall out of love. It's because they're actually not speaking each other's language. And what I have discovered, to take this a step deeper, what I've discovered is that most often people end up pairing with someone who speaks the opposite love language. And so by opposite, I mean, for example, for me, my primary love language is acts of service, meaning I like to have people do things for me. That feels loving when somebody takes the trash out or brings me a lunch or something like that. My lowest one is gifts. I have literally 0 love language in gifts. And I think my next lowest one is words of affirmation. So when people tell me that I've done a great job, that doesn't really land to me as love. It just kind of feels like, I don't know, just goes somewhere else. My husband, my partner, my lover, he is the total opposite. So acts of service is one of his lowest, and words of affirmation is his highest. So what happens is he tries to love me the way he wants to be loved, and I do the same. So, I'm thinking, well, I want to be loved by acts of service, so I'll do a bunch of things for him, and then he'll really feel how much I love him. And he's over there like, why are you doing all these things for me? I can totally do it myself, right? And then he's like, oh, I'm going to show you how much I love you by telling you how great you are. And then I'm like, why are you telling me how great I am all the time? What I want is for you to take out the trash. Do you see? This is the cosmic dance we do. These dances, by the way, occur because of the 96% of our brains that are subconscious. My subconscious was dancing with his subconscious when we partnered. And I believe that happens because we are medicine for each other, right? Your relationship is your greatest spiritual teacher. So it's in the awareness of words of affirmation happens to be one of the hardest things for me to give. Like, I'm not an easy praise giver. And so when I find out that's one of his highest things, it's like, oh, that's going to be so grueling. How am I going to say words I don't mean? How will I, like all of the monkey talk. How will I give him enough words so that he'll feel happy about that? Now his happiness is my responsibility. Like all of that bullshit. And one of the things that, I'm sure his name's Gary. I'm sorry. I should have looked that up before I started talking about him. I think his name's Gary Chapman, the author of the book. What he says is, love is a choice. Love is a choice. And so every time you choose to give someone what their language is, it is an act of love in itself, right? And so you're expanding your own heart by deciding that you are willing to love someone the way they want to be loved. And then ideally, they're going to start loving you the way you want to be loved, right? And it was funny because when we didn't know this about ourselves, my husband, like I would ask him to do something and he would resist it. And so we had a lot of tension around like, why don't you ever do anything I ask you? And what it felt like to him was kind of this never ending hole of like, really what you want is a servant, you know, because you always want stuff done. Because I would always be asking and he would always not be doing it. So then I would feel really bad about myself. Like, well, maybe I am a never ending hole of, you know, demanding service. You know, I don't really know why I do that. And I don't know why I'm not satisfied with, you know, what he actually does do for me. And when I learned this language, it helped me to understand like, oh, that's how I speak. And for those of you who've done core event work with me or know about, you know, this idea of core wounding, which is the moment your ego forms, I also believe your love language is informed by that. It's created by that because everything is. So in my core wound story, I was trying to get in the door and it was locked and no one was helping me. So my primary love language is people helping me, right? I like the tangibility of I asked you to do something and you were there for me in this really concrete way. You know, words don't actually land for me in that same way. And for my husband, conversely, you know, it was wild because in our whole marriage, we've agreed to not give each other gifts. Like for, you know, anniversaries and birthdays and things like that. Because our theory or what we had said is like, well, we just kind of buy ourselves stuff when we want it. So we don't have to make a big deal about one special day. Well, that was great for me because I'm a 0 on gifts. So that totally worked. But when my husband took the quiz, what he discovered is actually gifts are his number 2 love language. And I was like, how can that be your number 2 love language and you have agreed to not ever have any gifts? What are you doing? Well, you know, and for him, it was enlightening because he's a hero archetype. So he's always about appropriate versus authentic. So like, oh, well, you didn't want gifts. So I just thought I didn't want gifts, you know? And so it was just eye-opening for both of us to understand ourselves at this really deeper level. And then, in my opinion, to take it to the next level, which is this energetic exchange between us of knowing how so there's like this special flavor of heart energy, right? Of how I like to be loved. Like when I get an act of service, my heart gets especially warm and tingly. And I'm learning how when I get my husband a gift, even though it pushes all my buttons because I think I'm not going to pick the perfect one and will he like it? And, you know, like I'm learning by watching him give gifts, how he does it, what his philosophy is behind it. I'm practicing opening to love within myself so that I can allow the experience of getting a gift for him to be loving the entire time. So it's not about the result. It's about exercising these muscles that we just opened, these energetic pathways, and having a really direct idea of how to do them, right? So that we're already sort of set up for success. And then we have success and that just reinforces the opening that we're creating for ourselves, you know? So if you're looking for a way to implement these brand new pathways for yourself to really become this, you know, this Valentine, to be this living embodiment of the Valentine of yourself, step 1 is to go take the quiz and find out what your own love language is, and then communicate that to people who love you, right? So I love it actually with my children. I have it on my bulletin board right beside my desk. So it reminds me each day, like my daughter's, one of her primary is touch. And so she loves to cuddle and she loves to get massages and she loves to get her nails done by me. And again, that's not one of my primary ones. So it's a stretch for me every time I do that. And I also know how much she loves it. So if I'm doing something special for her birthday, or if it just catches my attention, it's like, oh, I'm going to snuggle with her tonight. I'm going to give her some time and just like stroke her arm and touch her leg. And, you know, or if they do something well at school and I'm thinking about how do I want to reward that or acknowledge it, I'm going to look at their love language and I'm going to see what would feel good in their system, you know? And it just feels like, for me, it feels like a beautiful way of caretaking each other, of really honoring the uniqueness of each of our flavors and our path, and knowing that our path, you know, our preferences come from wounds. So it's like every time I love my husband through a gift, or every time I tell him he's doing a good job, it's like I'm healing part of the wound that comes from, Every time he serves me, he heals the trust issues in my system of like, no one's there for me, and it's truly a gift. It's not like it's up to him to heal me. It's not up to me to heal him. I can't do for him what he wouldn't do for himself. But from this place of love, it all just becomes really pure. There aren't any attachments. There's no, I'm going to do this so you can heal, so you can show up for me better in the relationship. It's like none of that. It's just this really beautiful, clear, open-hearted space of yumminess. So your step 2 would be to invite those that you love, your partner, your children, to also take the quiz and then write it down. Write it down. Be mindful of what they are. Tend to them as an act of love and allow yourself to be ministered to in the same way. Let them be the Red Cross nurse who comes to your own aid. And now you have a portal for like, oh, that's just my favorite flavor of love. And it happens to cause me to want to open even more. Yeah. So with that, I feel good. I feel happy. I was making some more connections as we were talking about literally, I felt like the universe gave my mind a shake like a snow globe, like, nope, none of that stuff you were going to say. And now you have to lead from your heart. So again, deep bow to the divine and to all of the guides and angels and supporters that stand by this show and this medicine and guide us so beautifully on our paths back to ourselves. So make sure to join us with your reflections over in the tribe. If you're not yet a member of the tribe, you can join us for free at facebook.com/groups/Wild Soul Medicine Radio Tribe. You can also connect with us here on the chat, www.wsmrchat.com. Viv's been posting some yummy things, and you can actually find the 5 Love Languages site over there on the chat site as well. So until next week, my loves, I love you. Thank you for being who you are. Bye for now.
We light a candle, our hearts awake. Illumination, for God's sake. A revelation, for God's sake. An inspiration, for God's sake. Illumination, for God's sake. For God's sake. For God's sake. For God's sake.